Welcome to Wolves of the Written Word.
More college students should read.
Reading is cool.
Have you ever read a book before?
Of course I have. This show used to be a podcast.
Dystopian is my favorite genre.
That's depressing.
Wow, I can't believe that's banned.
Wolves of the Written Word.
Wolves of the Written Word.
Wolves of the Written Word. Wolves of the Written Word. Wolves of the Written Word. Wolves of the Written Word. Wolves of the Written Word.
Enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Wolves of the Written Word. I'm your host, Sean Smith.
I'm your co-host, Janelle Michelle.
I'm your co-host, Adias Stubblefield.
And today we're going to be talking about dystopian genres. Now, if you're just tuning in for the very first time, Wolves of the Written Word is a live book show at Wolf Radio where we talk about reading books and, of course, the written word. We have about 3 rules on this show that we like to talk about. The first rule being that we at least talk about the good and the bad of any book in any genre that we discuss here on this episode. The second rule is that we try to at least read before we actually talk about anything on the episode. And of course, the third rule is we're here to have fun. We're here to talk about our favorite books, our favorite authors, and anything that, of course, we would like. So I know this is the Monday after our very, very rocky spring break. How are you guys doing?
Take me back.
Yeah, it was too short.
It was way too short. It was like the longest week ever, but the shortest
shortest week ever.
Mm-hmm.
Like, wow.
Yeah, I feel like I didn't do much. Like, I didn't do a lot this spring break. I could go back and do more, most definitely. But I am excited that we're back and that we have all these things to talk about. So let's talk about Dystopian.
Okay. Now, dystopias have been the very forefront genre that we have seen before. And for those of you who aren't aware of what a dystopia is, it's basically sort of like an opposite of a utopia. It's meant to showcase something in society that we have kind of taken for granted, or something that's a bit more rocky or a bit weird, and we kind of amp it up to see what would happen if this was kind of actual part of our own society. And it's mostly about fear, control, surveillance, anything involving those themes. And it's a bit harder to kind of focus on these things because dystopias they were considered fiction. Now it's a bit harder to kind of see because we know that we kind of see these things happening in our reality now. But dystopias are still sort of like a very important genre that we like, and we often read them from time to time. So just to bring up, of course, for the rest of the table, what really defines a dystopian story and what elements make it recognizable?
Okay, I'll go. I feel like one of the major elements in a dystopian book, a dystopian movie, just like dystopian as a genre, is that you have to have a regime that's over everything and that is impacting the people, whether they're aware of it or not. Because in every dystopian book that you read, you will see that there's like a government or there's this organization or there's just somebody who is above everybody, who is making the decisions for everyone and affecting their lives. And the people are either for it or they're against it because they either know that there's a life past this or this is all they know.
I agree. When I see dystopian, I think of like conformity and a leader. And, like, I think that just, like, is the main theme of dystopian. Like, there's going to be a leader, and there are people who want to either go against it or they're conforming and staying in place.
Yeah.
It's a very common theme in dystopias to have, like, the main character sort of rebel against this regime. And sometimes some versions of dystopians often have it where it's not really like the main character defeating the bad guy and then there'll always be a change. Some books like 1984 or Animal Farm often kind of shows that this is somehow our set reality and that sometimes it's a bit harder for us to kind of enact any proper change. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that there wouldn't be any change or anyone can't make a change. It's just that sometimes even one person still can't really make that much of a difference in this case. And sometimes reality does come crashing down a bit more harder.
Yeah.
And I think it is a bit more recognizable for dystopians for those elements.
Yeah.
But now we're going to talk about our favorite dystopian books.
Okay. That's a good segue because that also works with something that I wanted to say about like elements of dystopian.
Mm-hmm.
Something that you will see all the time in dystopian books, especially like from I think it was like the early 2000s to the 2010s,
Yeah.
is that they loved to give like a savior complex somewhere in this book. Like we're living under this regime. Everything is horrible. We're dying. We need help. Oh, insert this random teenage girl or this random teenage boy
And I
who's
feel
going to
like
come
they're
save us.
always teenage.
They're always
Like,
teenage.
They're always teenage.
It's never like a fully grown adult. It's never like somebody who's in their 30s, never somebody who's in their 20s. And they always do it in a very interesting way. And it's always slightly different, but slightly similar.
Yeah.
Like my favorite, my favorite dystopian book, book and movie, Maze Runner. I love the Maze Runner.
I love Maze Runners. That's one of my
So
top
good.
3 dystopian
I'm telling you,
series.
and I watched the movie before I read the book, and the book is so good, and there's so many details, and I love the fact that there's a lot going on. So
There's so much going on, yeah.
if you don't know about Maze Runner, just a brief synopsis is that basically we're living in this world where something happened. These kids are just waking up in this random field that's called like the Glade, the maze, and they basically have no memories. They forget their names for days. Then they have this random wall that opens up like at a certain time every day, and they're supposed to run through it, and it's like this whole maze that they're going through. And then one day this boy Thomas is sent up. He's just like, yeah, I don't know who I am, but this is weird. Y'all should not just be doing this because people have been here for years, and they're just like,
and
okay.
for me, what's funny is like the first book takes place in 3 days.
Which is crazy.
And like the main characters, like not the main characters, the main people stuck in the maze have been stuck for like years.
Yeah.
But Thomas comes in 3 days.
And he's just like, okay, yeah,
We're
let's
not
get it
doing
done.
this.
Which is crazy because I think one of the characters has been stuck there for maybe like 7 years.
Yeah, he spent like a long time there.
Yeah. And it's just like, you've been here for all this time. Then this random kid just shows up and it's just like,
Because Dystopian really does. I think it hits on the nail, like the savior complex. Like
Yeah.
when you think about it, it's really crazy that all these other guys have been stuck here. Oh, we forgot to say it's all boys.
it's all boys.
until one girl comes.
Yeah. And then that one girl coming kind of sets everything off to be like, okay, something's wrong. We got to get out of here. And then obviously there's more books. There's more. But, read the books if you want to know more. Or watch the movies.
I watched the movies.
I'm pro either.
And the Maze Runner is very interesting, and I think it's sort of like more of the modern evolution equivalent of dystopians, because before, such classic dystopians such as 1984 or Brave New World mostly focuses on a society where everything's always controlled and there's like a aspect of it. But something like Maze Runner or Hunger Games even, it still has that element, but it has sort of like a modern spin to it where it feels like that it's also kind of expressing some kind of original story and warning something, but also it isn't as like completely traditional compared to like most dystopian novels.
Yeah, because my top 3 dystopians has to be Maze Runner, Parable of the Sower, and Uglies. And like as you were saying, they're not as like the classics were. It's literally like taken place in our time. And I think that's what draws me so much to it, because it feels like a warning sign of what like needs to happen if we don't want to fall down like the wrong path.
Yeah. Or if it's not in our time, it's like a couple years
yeah.
before where we are right now, which is so terrifying when you think about it. Like I remember being younger and reading Hunger Games for the first time, and then that was around the time that the movies had came out, and everybody was saying like, oh, they said this is happening. They said in about 10 years, Hunger Games is going to happen. We're all going to be put into the Hunger Games. And I was just like, can we not put everybody into the Hunger Games? I'm only like 6 or 7. I don't have time to, I don't get time to be in the Hunger Games. But I just find it so interesting how like you'll see the savior complex, and then you'll also see there's a more modern telling of it, but it stays the exact same. Like they stay true and they stay real with, we have problems and we know that we have problems and we know that we have no control, but we want to have control. So we're going to fight for control.
Well, my favorite dystopian novel is The Giver. I read it once when I was, I think, in 7th grade. And it was very interesting to me because it was a society where they had like only 2 kids and everyone's the same. They get assigned these jobs when they turn 13. Apparently they can't see color, and I think there's also like some genetic modification to remove emotion, which they believe that emotion would lead to distrust and actual violent action, which in theory is all right, but then it removes individuality. I mean, if you can't feel sadness or hope or love, then you're not really feeling human. And I feel like that there's like 1984 and Animal Farm, but like The Giver is definitely like the pinnacle for me for a dystopian novel, because it does show a society where it seemingly is perfect, but at a cost for what it means to be an individual. But there is sort of a bigger cost, which is drinking irresponsibly. College students who binge drink alcohol at least 3 times per week were roughly 6 times more likely to perform poorly on a test or project because of drinking. Dream City Brewing Company, Wolf Sports Network, and Wolf Radio proudly remind you to drink responsibly campaign. Students 21 and over should drink responsibly in an environment that discourages overindulging. Faculty won't take hangovers as excuses. But in the meantime, we'll be right back.
I started reading a book about a maze. I got lost in it. You're listening to Wolves of the Written Word.
Yo, what's up with these bodacious tunes? Wait, gag me with a spoon. Why am I talking like this?
No idea, but let's put that unique voice to use and sign you up for Wolf Radio's WIT program. Our righteous staff have the know-how to make you a radio expert.
Radical. So how do I sign up?
Just go to thewolfUWG.com and click the WIT program link under our About drop-down menu. Piece of cake. But we got a motor. Sticking to the clock is the most important rule of radio. Cowabunga!
keep calm and listen on. You're listening to Wolves of the Written Word.
When you look good, you feel good. When it fits good, you feel good. Now you can rep your favorite college station with our brand new merch store powered by Old Zero Apparel. Visit thewolfuwg.com and click about. That's thewolfuwg.com. We're back with Wolves of the Written Word, and if you're just tuning in, we're talking about the dystopian genre, sort of a reverse of the utopian genre, in which we talk about society collapsing and sort of becoming more surveillance and sort of authoritative. And we have been talking before about our favorite dystopian novels, which we have read before, even when we were younger, not as adults or anywhere else. I mean, we're college students, but it's interesting that we have read these things since we were younger. But for now, we're actually going to talk about the good and the bad of the dystopian genre itself, the pros and the cons. First, we're going to talk about the strengths. What would you say is a good strength of the dystopian genre?
I think a really good strength of the dystopian genre is the fact that it makes you think. Like, dystopian is meant for you to think. You cannot read or watch or just do anything with the dystopian genre and not think at all. Like, you can't just be like, okay, I'm going to read Hunger Games and I'm just going to think that it's a silly little game. Like, we're just playing games. Nobody's really dying. It's fun. No, Hunger Games is meant to make you think. Like, you actually have to sit there and think. And I think Dystopian does that really well.
Also, the complex characters. I feel like a lot of books have great characters, but in Dystopian specifically, they're so complex and so thought out. And, like, you get to know them layer by layer by layer by layer by layer. And I feel like that's so important because if you don't have that, then that's when, like, the savior complex comes from a lot of dystopian novels. So, yeah, I feel like one big strength has to be the characters.
Yeah.
A strength for me is, I do agree with Janelle's strength about making you think about where if you have something in society that is so common, is it right that it's always common? And I know, and this is why dystopians are so good, because it also plays into the historical aspects where, like, there have been moments in which a whole country has only instituted a law where you can only have 2 kids, or a law where only certain people can be separated into certain areas, or a law where only a certain amount of people can only get this and only a certain amount of people can get that. And it does make you think a lot. And whenever I started reading The Giver back in 7th grade, it was my foothold into the dystopian genre, but it also allowed me to kind of realize that right and wrong could also be a bit more gray, but sometimes you would have to challenge that authority that kind of sets the status quo per se. And also that dystopians could also make you think that, okay, if something is wrong, then we can be able to speak up about it.
Yeah, dystopian is very interesting in the fact that, like, baseline, truthfully, the only thing that you need to write in the dystopian genre is we are in a bad place. Things are going wrong. We have no power. And you could really take that and go anywhere.
Yeah.
You could take that and do anything. And, like, the fact that we can, a lot of the time when we talk about dystopian, we compare books within the dystopian genre that are very similar to each other, but you could really take 2 books that seem like they should be in 2 completely separate genres, compare them to each other, and they're both very dystopian.
Yes, and I know that it's very strong for a dystopian genre to kind of challenge different ideas about society, and I would say that it's hard to understand sort of a baseline weakness, but for now, what would you say is kind of the biggest weakness of dystopian, despite it being depressing and pessimistic?
I feel like some novels, especially like the modern dystopian novels, can be really confusing to read, especially for your first time. I remember when I read Maze Runner and Uglies, you're really confused because a lot of the times for the modern ones, you're thrown right in with the main characters. So what they know, you know. So while for some people, like, it's fun piecing together the mystery, I'm not like that. Like, I want to know the information. And I think that's just its main weakness because a lot of that falls, like, under the umbrella of, like, mystery dystopian. So we're figuring this out together.
Yeah. I also do think that sometimes, and this is good for any genre, but I think with dystopians, sometimes they like to stay with cliches.
Yeah.
They really like to stay, like, they like to stay with most of the time teenager who has no power, like we were talking about earlier, the savory complex. They like to do teenager who has no power, who's put into a position where they have to basically save everybody around them so that they can save themselves, and then they have to save their entire country, their entire world, and then person over them who has a bunch of power but for some reason is obsessed with this teenager who has no power.
Because like every dystopian novel that I'm thinking about, the main character is between 12 and 21. Like there's no in between. That is a really like, that's my big like red herring about dystopians, because it's just always like a young protagonist, which there's nothing wrong with that. It's just like every single time.
Yeah, and then there's always this person who's between like their late 40s, their early 70s, who is obsessed with this young character. And just like in a, not just in a, oh yeah, you're trying to stop my plans type of way.
Sometimes it's in a like a weird creepy way.
Yeah, it's
like,
kind of like, okay, sure, I'm trying to stop your plans because you're killing people. Why are
Divergent?
Divergent.
The villain in Divergent was weird. Like I remember reading it for the first time, and like the villain has like an obsession with like these teenage people, and it's just like now reading it back with like an older mindset, the people in power not just were they like power hungry, they also were like after like when you just think about it, they're after children.
Yeah, it's very weird, it's very strange, and I think that's something that even though it's an interesting part about dystopian, it's also kind of like a, why are we doing this?
For my weaknesses, it's kind of similar to you guys as well. Young protagonist, and the young protagonists actually started to rise, I think, around the 2010s with Hunger Games and such. Before that, dystopians were mostly focused on just a regular, maybe male protagonist, maybe female protagonist, as an adult fighting against an authoritative person. And the cliches for dystopians are very strong and heavy. Sometimes it's pretty obvious what they're trying to do for that. You have a character in a society. They feel like that their society is wrong, so they challenge the status quo. And eventually they either win or they lose. And it does get a bit cliched. And I think my weakness is that it is a bit predictable, where you are more focused on the society as a whole, on how this world would work if it were to actually exist in reality, rather than the story. Like every single time when I think about Hunger Games, I don't remember about Katniss defeating the government or any of the characters. No, I remember about, what would happen if you were to take a bunch of random people and then have them fight against each other just to, get their spoils and win. I mean, and surprisingly, it works in some way. I mean, I know that, it's obviously very bad, but for some reason, those teenagers are very excited to join in for some reason.
Yeah, it's also because of like the propaganda element, which is something that I think the dystopian genre, that's like a strength for dystopian. Dystopian shows you how well propaganda can work, and it shows you like all you need is the slightest bit of like, oh, this is normal, this is okay, everybody's doing this, and you can convince so many people. Like Hunger Games, I agree with that. As much as I love Hunger Games, the thing that sticks with me the most is the games. The games and this whole thing of like they've made a show out of the games in the way that like we think of the World Cup or we think of the Super Bowl or we think of the Olympics. Like they've basically turned those things, and it's like, we want to do this. I want to be a part of it. Like the careers, they train the careers since the moment that they are born. Yeah. That like it is an honor to be sent to the games and to die. Like or to kill. And that's crazy.
That's crazy.
It's so
but
crazy.
It's something that dystopian, I think it's a strength and a weakness.
I was thinking back on what we were saying about the younger protagonist. I feel like the authors and stuff like that were trying to say something that like the youth do have the power to invoke change. So while I don't like the cliche all the time, because I think it's like creepy and weird at some points, I do understand why they do it, and I do kind of like it because like you're able to put yourself in like the main character's shoes because you're their age, and it's just like if I see something that I don't like, I have the power to like stand up and make a difference.
Yeah, and that's why dystopians are very unique and impactful, because they kind of show variations about reflections on our society. And I feel like that for dystopians, they also do kind of focus on concept over character, where these characters are experiencing this society rather than actually trying to kind of dismantle it. But there are a lot more variations that you can learn about right now in...
It's time for Literature Fun Fact. Spin the wheel and learn something new.
That's right. It's time for a Literature Fun Fact, our special segment where we learn something new about our favorite topic. So for the fun fact about dystopians, the dystopian genre has created variations in subgenres, which include post-apocalyptic fiction, which includes McCarthy's The Road and Stephen King's The Stand. The Walking Dead could also be considered a dystopian as well. Cyberpunk, like William Gibson's Neuromancer. The Matrix also contributes to that as well.
Cinder.
Yes,
Cinder.
and Cinder too. Cli-fi or climate fiction works like Paolo Bellucci's The Wind Up Girl depicts dystopian futures shaped by environmental disasters, such as maybe the moon crashing down onto Earth or global warming. I don't know if any of you have seen Snowpiercer, where they're on that train and then climate change has made it like an endless winter. And the anime subgenre, most notably Attack on Titan, Psychopaths, or anything that involves sort of like society being crumbled down. So are there any like other variations that you might have noticed that might fit under these sub-variations of dystopian?
I can think of one dystopian book, but I don't know the name of it. It's like dystopia, but we took space exploration like really far. And like the book was like there was a war in space. So like instead of having a war on the Earth, they were fighting in space to figure out like how they were going to battle. So I don't know what that falls under, but that's a dystopian book I just thought of that I really like. When he said climate.
That actually sounds so interesting. I would read that. The thing about dystopian is there's so many subgenres that you don't realize is a subgenre because you just think that's dystopian. Like, what would Hunger Games fall under? That wouldn't be post-apocalyptic. No, what would Hunger Games fall under, in your opinion? Sean?
It would kind of fall under sort of the YA sub-variation of dystopian, where it has the same classic dystopian elements, like a society, authoritative propaganda, but it has like a main character who's a teenager, and it mostly focuses a lot on romance and teenage problems compared to the classic stuff. Like if George Orwell probably wrote The Hunger Games, it would probably not even have all those stuff that you would have complained about. In my opinion, Katniss would have just died if he would have wrote that.
Most likely. I mean, if we're thinking realistically, because of the fact that like Katniss is, supposed to be like the savior of Pan Am, there's this whole thing of basically plot armor against her, but then everybody else in her life is being affected because of the plot armor that she has, so that it affects her also. Like if you think about it, okay, Katniss doesn't die. Katniss' sister does. Katniss' dad is dead. Katniss' boyfriend is going through it. Like, basically, because Katniss doesn't go through it, everybody else is going through it, which is, interestingly enough, something that I did notice in a lot of dystopians that they like to do. But I also think that's just, like, a torture element that is in dystopian, where they like to torture the people around our main character so that our main character can be affected without actually being affected.
Because in Maze Runner, they killed off like 5 of my favorite characters unprovoked when like, I mean, I get why, because it's the main character and they have plot armor. However, like as a reader, I don't want to see that.
Yeah. Or even like Divergent. We just taking people. We just taking and killing people for no reason.
That was like, that made me upset. It was for zero reason Divergent. Like they just killed people to kill people.
They quite actually do. Or even in something that's like a little lesser known, Cinder, because we mentioned that earlier. Cinder and Hunger Games are on like opposite sides of the dystopian, but they're very similar in aspects. But something that they do in Cinder is that they drop this girl in a basically like traumatic situation in the way that she wakes up one day, she's half android. She doesn't know how she became half cyborg, half android. It just happened. And then she has a bad home situation. Then her best friend is dying. Her sister died. So it's like we're affecting you without actually causing you pain. And if we do cause you pain, it's less pain that's physically and it's more emotional pain.
And for Cinder, it is sort of like a soft dystopian where like, again, like I said before, concept over character. Cinder is definitely character
over
concept.
Where I learn and sympathize with Cinder and everything that's going on. But it doesn't have those same dystopian style elements that you would recognize. Yes, they have like a one world government or like maybe some kind of emperor, and they have these lunars coming from I don't know if they're on the moon or if they have their own planet, but they have like their own like different thing. But it isn't as like dystopian style. Like if I were to live in this world, I would probably be comfortable living in this world compared to Hunger Games.
Yeah.
If anything, that's a subgenre in and of itself. Soft dystopian, I would say that's a subgenre.
And I really like fantasy dystopian.
I love
I
fantasy
love a good
dystopian.
fantasy dystopian book.
Because there's so much that you can do mashing together those genres. Or like low-key, sub-genre, dystopian mixed with another genre. Like horror dystopian or fantasy dystopian or, okay, comedy dystopian, but you don't see that as often because
I don't think I've ever read like a comedy. I feel like that would be really, really good though.
I feel like it would be really
I
good.
would read a comedy dystopian book any
would.
day of the week.
Yeah. Like, let's laugh about the fact that we're being tortured.
Because I feel like Teen Titans could do that. If DC, like, come on, lock it. Like, a dystopian set with superheroes, I feel like that would, like, be really good.
That would be
I
really
would read
good.
it.
Yes, and I know dystopians are very important in helping us, making us think, and there's a lot of variety as well in dystopians, but there's also a lot of variety in how you can drink responsibly. In a recent survey, almost 53% of full-time college students ages 18 to 22 drank alcohol in the past month. That is why Dream City Brewing Company, Wolf Sports Networks, and Wolf Radio's Drink Responsibly campaign is here to remind you that there is no drinking under the age of 21. Never drink and drive, even if it's one alcoholic drink. Now add food and water when you drink so you won't end up texting your ex, which means know your limits. And we'll be right back soon when we talk more about dystopians.
You're listening to Wolves of the Written Word, where the stories are more than just what's on the pages.
show is not over yet. We'll be back with more Wolves of the Written Word here on Wolf Radio.
When you look good, you feel good. When it fits good, you feel good. Now you can rep your favorite college station with our brand new merch store powered by Old Zero Apparel. Visit thewolfewg.com and click about. And if you're just tuning in to Wolves of the Written Word, we have been talking about the dystopian genre. We have been talking about very sub-genres, very different variations, the importance of it. Now we're, of course, going to be very serious and talk about the importance of the dystopian genre itself through predicting the future. Now, as you know, our society has kind of, gotten a bit different. Gas prices are increasing, information's
Don't get me started on the gas prices.
rewriting and all that stuff. And often or not, people have, of course, said that these dystopian novels, which were banned through libraries and bookstores, by the way, have been predicting the downfall of our society. Now, of course, we're mostly talking about the American government, but there have also been other countries that have also faced this entire kind of issue as well. So it's not just like a complete American thing, but at the same time, it is still something to kind of keep note about. So I'll probably say this. Do you think that dystopian stories reflect real world issues, or do you say that they exaggerate them?
They reflect.
They reflect.
One of my favorite authors is Octavia Butler. She wrote Parable of the Sower, and she predicted a lot of things that would happen in 2026, 2027, and like 2028 in her books. That's the years it took place. And a lot of people asked her, like when she was writing the book, how do you think this will happen? Like, how are you able to predict the future? And her statement is, if you take issues that we have right now and things don't change, that's how you can predict the future. And she was right on the nail for that. So I feel like dystopian kind of is like, again, like a warning of what could happen if things don't change. And that's why they get banned.
I fully agree with that. Like, I actually fully agree with that. And that's so scary. Because I remember back before we became a show podcast, I remember your episode talking about the Parable of the Sower and how weird that is. Like, that's actually so weird and so interesting. The fact that she was able to fully predict that. But when you explain her reasoning, it makes total sense. It actually makes total sense. And then I feel like we've talked about Hunger Games 1,000 times in this episode. But Suzanne Collins, author of the Hunger Games, she quite actually has, since whenever the Hunger Game books first came out, you see that she has fully mapped out, this is what society could look like. Like, yes, it's a fictional society, but it mirrors our society so much, down to the districts being states, basically. Like, if we're really thinking about it, dystopian mirrors so well.
So well. Like,
because it's just what's happening. It's what's happened and it's what's happening. And it's like they said, you were saying that earlier with history. You have to look back in history so that we don't make the same mistakes. But if you think about it, dystopian is looking forward to the future in a fictional lens and telling you, don't make these mistakes. Like, this is what happened in my head for this is what our future could look like. If you're reading this, choose to make a decision so that this does not happen. Because all fiction is based off a little bit of a reality.
Yes, and I do believe that it also does reflect our society as well. And I believe that all novels reflect at least 50% of our reality. Even the books that are a bit more fantastical, like The Wizard of Oz or Lord of the Rings, they take something, a part of ourselves in our lives that we contribute to this story. And dystopians are like a strong reflection of that. And it's sort of ironic that like most of these novels have like gotten more attention, like Fahrenheit 451, which was a banned book. You banned the book about banning books, which is crazy to think about. And it's insane. And it's easy to note that because it's sort of like you're seeing all these little stepping stones where like somehow these things are happening and now these things are happening. And somehow it's hard to really tell whether or not if these things can kind of become a lot more crazier. Now, I don't believe that we're like at least one step away from Hunger Games or The Giver or Uglies or Divergent.
We're
definitely not
like,
Divergent.
It's definitely like 3 steps away.
Actually, about Uglies, because I love Uglies. I feel like Uglies, we aren't like a step away, but I feel like we could be gearing towards it. I feel like Uglies, he kind of wrote like the pretties and the uglies as the rich and the poor. And like he used beauty as a way to differentiate that. So like feel like rereading it now is kind of important because you do see like a lot of how like the pretties, the rich control over like the uglies, the poor. So I feel like, yeah, uglies, definitely everyone should reread it right now.
Low-key, I say just like watching dystopian movies, reading dystopian books, just anything in the dystopian genre right now, go back and look at it. Like, if you have not watched Hunger Games in a couple years, go back and look at it. If you have not, well, you should be watching Hunger Games and reading the books anyways, because, you know, new movie coming out in November. So, you know, get on that. But if you haven't, go read it, go watch it. If you haven't seen Maze Runner, go read it, go watch. Like, anything in dystopian that people have said over the past couple of years, they're like, I don't know, y'all, this is seeming a little bit too realistic. Go look at it, and then go look at where our society is right now.
Yeah.
It's mirroring. It is like, we're definitely not a step away. We're not 3 steps away. We're not like there, but we're heading there. Like,
yeah.
we're on a train, and the train is going to this destination. And if we don't really sit and think about it and we just ignore it, what are you going to do when your kid is getting drafted for the Hunger Games? What are you going to do?
Yes, and I know that all these ideas are kind of surfacing up, and they're being more prevalent in our society. But would you say that society itself is kind of moving toward or away dystopian ideas? And just to kind of elaborate on that, it does not only mean that they are banning dystopian books or that they are kind of pushing away from that. It also kind of deals with media literacy as well. Like, are people focusing and being more aware of these ideas, regardless if it was from a novel or from history itself, or are they turning away and ignoring it?
I think it's like half and half. I think people are realizing that we're heading towards these ideas, and since they're realizing that, they're choosing to turn away and ignore it because they don't want to accept the fact that this is a little realistic, and this is kind of where we are right now.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like we are heading towards, and I feel like a lot of people are becoming like more aware of problems happening and how they should like stop to fix it. But on the other hand, I feel like a lot of people are still turning like an ignorant eye, and it's just like, it's not affecting me, so why should I care? Which is a dystopian theme of like the people who are up top. It's not affecting me, so why should I care? So when you really sit down and think about it, it is like really, really scary. But I do feel like a lot of people are moving, or at least trying to move the right way to avoid dystopian.
And I know that we have talked about Parable of the Sower, Hunger Games, a lot of very amazing dystopian novels, and even kind of touched upon different variations of those novels, like Blade Runner and I think The Matrix. Again, dystopian is very broad because of course it focuses on a lot of different themes and topics. And I know that for Parable of the Sower, Janelle, you have mentioned that it is very close in reality and in this prediction. Now, personally, I never read it, of course, but I do remember Adia talking about it when it was a podcast. But for now, has there been any other books that have been a bit more closer to society now than you would believe, besides Hunger Games?
Well, answer your own question.
Answer my own question?
Answer your own question.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. So I feel like that we are kind of closely getting a little bit more closer to the Big Brother aspect of 1984. Just a little bit. Not too crazy, though. We are entering a world where our entire society is becoming very contradictory to the point where the whole point is just to establish control and everything else. An example of this was the Super Bowl, when Bad Bunny was leading the halftime show, and they literally decided to create a counter-programming halftime show just to try and get more people out. Obviously, no one saw it.
Yeah.
I mean, the people that did see it are a bit different, or mostly it might have been bots. But it is still a bit hard to see a bit more of the surveillance aspect where like certain things and ideas are a bit more closer. And I know that, dystopians do exaggerate some things, There aren't firefighters burning books. I mean, I don't think there has been a thing where people are grabbing a bunch of books from libraries and burning them in piles. Or there hasn't been moments in which we do have plastic surgery, but there isn't like a law requiring you to change your appearance so everyone does look the same.
Yeah.
And even though that there are a lot of stuff, foreign affairs, and there's a lot of rumors of a draft or anything like that, I'm pretty sure there won't be an American Hunger Games. And
Aren't they doing the Patriot games?
the
Right.
Patriot
Yeah,
games.
that was for like the 250th anniversary. They're doing like a Patriot games.
Okay, here's my thing. I don't know if there's a book that I'm thinking of in particular that I'm just like, oh yeah, we're 2 steps and a skip away from that. 2 steps and a skip is crazy. But I don't know if like there's anything that we're that close to. But I do think that like we're heading towards a lot of dystopian tropes. Like Hunger Games, okay. Are we about to go draft all the people who are under 18? No. So I think they're about to start doing some crazy laws because they're already trying to get the people away from school and from reading and whatever. Yes. Do I think that we're heading slightly towards things like Fahrenheit 451, The Giver, Uglies? Yes. Do I think it's going to be as like drastic or as dramatic as those books were? No, but I do think it might be like a couple steps down from where those were.
I agree. And this technically isn't a book, but they have like a comic book thing. Wall-E. I feel like we are as a society really close to Wall-E. Because when you think about it, it's like robots taking over. And while I am a person who strongly believes that like AI isn't going to take over anytime soon, like I also see how like robots now are taking over jobs that humans have done. I do see like people like being lazy. Like, you know that one scene in Wall-E? People are like actively doing that right now. And then like for me, a big one is like, I don't know, like technology as a whole. I feel like as a society, we are kind of like over dependent on technology now. People aren't really using like their brains. Literacy rate is going down. Like people like don't read anymore. I think the average reading book was like half a book last year. Was like the average American read half a book for a year, which is like insane. So if things don't change, I fear like Wall-E might be our future. Not anytime soon, but like in the next 100 or so years.
Yeah.
Wall-E is one of my favorite Pixar movies, and it is sort of like a big reflection of what would potentially happen towards dependence on technology, over consumerism and pollution. It's very hard to kind of like deal with that. But it's also important to note that while dystopians do focus a lot on thinking about what would happen for our society, they also are still stories. But stories, again, like I said before, have a bit of a reflection for our reality itself.
Yeah.
Animal Farm was based on the Russian Revolution. Hunger Games was mostly based on, mostly Greek mythology. But 1984 was mostly based on Cold War aspects. And during the Cold War, both sides disliked the book. The Americans said it was too communist, and the Soviets thought it was too critical of their reality, basically. And it's interesting to not really have a book like that, but it's also pretty interesting to see how books are like that. So we're now nearing that time again where we are about to end the show and close off and until the next beautiful Monday at noon. But are there any closing remarks that you guys have about Dystopians?
Make sure you read Dystopians. Dystopians are really important to read. You could watch a dystopian. Most of the 2010s dystopian teenage books have been turned into movies. So make sure you read or watch at least 1 or 2 of them.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also think even though we've said dystopian is scary and that dystopian, we're getting closer and closer to being in a dystopian society right now, it's also important to note it's also just fun watching it. It's fun watching it. It's fun reading it. If we're being so real, all these stories that we've been like, yeah, I think we're really close to, they're also just very entertaining. Like Maze Runner, it's entertaining to watch a bunch of kids try to escape a maze and then find out, actually, you escaped phase 1 of the maze. That's fun. It's fun to watch a girl who's in a society where everybody is put into like these different categories, divergent. It's fun. So like at the end of the day, dystopian is fun, but it's also serious.
Yes, and always make sure to read more and be more aware of everything that's going around, and that even though that dystopians do often reflect our reality, it would take a while before they would actually become true if they do. But in the meantime, I'm your host, Sean Smith.
I'm your co-host, Janelle Michelle.
I'm your co-host, Nadia Stubblefield.
And this has been Wolves of the Written Word.
Wolfstock.